Is the recorded? Perfect. I was just waiting for the little recording. So thank you guys so much for joining me on this Friday morning. If you are new to MobyMax, this will be a lot of great information to help you get started. If you've used it before, there have been a lot of changes. So we're just going to go over some of the different features and how to use them and help you feel successful when you start your MobyMax journey. Since it is a smaller group, please feel free to type your questions in the chat box and I'll check it periodically, kind of at the end of each section that we go over. So feel free to do that. And again, I'll answer questions as we go. If for some reason too, you can no longer see my presentation or like the teacher account or student account as I'm sharing it, please let me know. You can unmute and just let me know and I'll uh, figure it out so that you guys can see my screen at all times. So again, my name is Erin. I am your MobyMax success expert this year. So you might ask, what is a success expert? We're here to be your program's personal concierge. So anytime you have a question or you need to find data or, something might not be working, please reach out to me directly. That is my phone number, my direct line, also my email address, and we can hop on a Zoom meeting, a Google Meet. Again, send me an email anytime. If I'm not available to answer a phone call, you can leave a message, but I'm really here to help you again, learn MobyMax, be successful with the program, answer any questions. So my contact information will also be coming out in an email later today, kind of just a getting started welcome email. So it will be in this recording as well as in the emails throughout the year. I'll check the chat. Thank you so much. And if I do miss a question, I'll also ask that later. But our objective today is I will be able to identify and navigate to key MobyMax features in order to optimize time. I feel like as teachers, we never feel like we have enough time, right? Because there's so many things that happen throughout the year, every day. So MobyMax is really there to be your personal assistant. So we'll kind of talk about how we do that and what MobyMax is throughout the presentation, but it will be divided into 4 different sections. We'll go over what is MobyMax. We'll take a look at MobyMax Central or the teacher page, getting started, how teachers and students both get started, and then last will be how to assign some of those different features. We will be going over that today. We'll be taking a deep dive into all that information on October 28th. So come back for that refresher. We'll have that information as well as some other information, but that will be towards the end of the presentation. So first, what is MobyMax? It is a full K through 8 state standards aligned online curriculum. And I know we just switched over, so you guys are using those Minnesota standards so that, because that's what or I'm sorry, Katie, remind me, Minnesota standards or Common Core? I know we switched it over the summer so that you guys are aligned with the standards
Common
that you guys are
Core
grading on.
now.
Common Core.
Common
So we
Core
switched
with
it from,
yeah.
okay. So you guys are Common Core. You're all set up with that. We worked over the summer to make sure that that was all done. So now it is directly aligning with how you guys are grading your students, which is wonderful. We have automatic diagnostic testing, automatic skill assignments and remediation, and automatic grading. So if there's one thing you walk away today knowing, it is that MobyMax is automatic. So there's nothing that you have to plan or prep or set up. Everything will be done for you, and your students just have to log in and start with their modules. MobyMax is designed to find and fix student learning gaps. Again, throughout the year, we have things that come up, right? We know the path we need to take. We know the standards that we need to teach. We have a roadmap of how to get there. We have our curriculum, our resources, but then things happen. We need to reteach a lesson or a unit. We have a delay or a fire drill or what have you. So things happen throughout the year. And Moby is really there to, again, be your personal assistant. So work with what you're already doing in the classroom for your students. We do have that automatic route, and we also have a manual route. So automatic, again, Moby does all of the work for you, but you do have the option to assign skills, assessments, IEPs, and then you can kind of be in the driver's seat. So there's nothing formal that you have to select. Just know that everything is automatic, but you do always have that option to assign some of those manual options, adjust settings, things like that. So before I move into MobyMax Central, I saw a couple chat bubbles. Common Core, awesome. What's the difference between Moby and Google Classroom? So Google Classroom is just sort of, and I haven't used Google Classroom in a few years since I've been in the classroom, but I know Google Classroom, when I used it, was more of a organization tool. MobyMax is its own program. It has curriculum. Awesome, someone's answering that. Thank you so much. But it is a resource. It is a full K through 8 online curriculum with assessments, assignments, and we'll get into that. So throughout the presentation, you'll kind of see how teachers and students both use it. So taking a look at MobyMax Central, this is what your teacher page will look like. There might be a few extra videos or pop-up windows at the top, depending on if you've logged in or not this year and kind of what your program is using. But once you exit out of those or, continue to use it, this is what will be on your home page. There are these different widget boxes. So it's just sort of an overview of how your students are doing. We have real live time, key statistics, who's currently struggling, who is above or below grade level. So we have all of these great tools. We have how-to videos. My favorite widget, though, is the quick access section. So it's this upper left-hand box. Here's where you can see recently viewed tabs or modules. We have our cross-curricular reporting, which we will be talking about later, but the student summary is really important, charts and graphs, custom reports, your assignments. That was one of our feedback, features that was being noted. So we put assignments in a variety of different places that you can get to, but the quick access we will be coming to a lot today. Next up is our curriculum tab. So all of the curriculum in Moby is housed on this page. So you can see all of the different modules. As you are learning Moby or going through it, when you're assigning different things, you can click on the filters on the left-hand side. So we have IEP goals, assignable skills, placement tests. So especially as you're learning MobyMax, when you click on these different filters, it will highlight these subjects you can use that feature in. So it's really helpful just for kind of seeing what you can do in each module. Next up is our Engage tab. Our Engage, Manage, and Reporting used to be under the same tab Tools, but we separated that out so it's a little bit easier to find everything. So for our Engage tab, those are things like the achievement awards, the prizes, the vibes. So anything that you're really engaging with the students, um, that will all be under this tab. Moving on over to our Manage tab, that's more of the admin side of it. So you can look at your roster, adjust settings, look at your accounts. Games and contests are actually under this module. Some teachers think it's under Engage, but for right now it's Manage because you're managing those settings. Moving on over to the reporting tab. Again, you can find some of this on the quick access section on the homepage, but here's where some of your other reporting features or reports are located. So we have our student summary again, student dashboards, charts and graphs, custom reports, and then last but not least, our help tab. So if you ever have a question, again, feel free to reach out to me directly, but you can also type in a keyword and then different articles, videos pop up to help you get started on whatever you're trying to do. So this is a really great feature. We use it all the time as well, but it really helps with, again, as you're learning MobyMax to kind of see some of those different features. Up at the top, we have some different icons. We have our home tab. Anytime you see the bookmark tab, you can bookmark something. Again, it just makes it easier to find. We have our help and our notifications. The three dots in the upper right-hand corner, which I'll reference later, brings you to a couple different areas like settings, my accounts, assignments, announcements, and tasks. So you can get to things a couple different ways sometimes in Moby, whether it's from the home page, the three dots at the top, the curriculum tab. So there's a variety of ways of getting to where you need to be. Any questions in general, though, about your teacher account or anything that I covered just in this section? I'm going to see if I can make this just a little bit bigger so I don't miss anything. All right, awesome. Oop. Okay, getting started with MobyMax. So now we'll take a look at how teachers get started, how students get started, and some of those different things that can be set up. So setting up your MobyMax classroom. Setting up your roster, registering students, we will go over, but it is program specific. So please ask your program director for more information, whether you are rostering your own students or if they are doing it for you. Each program is going to be a little bit different. Some will register their own students. We'll just briefly talk about that, while others will have their rosters managed by your site lead. Assigning licenses, though, for all programs will be done by your site coordinator. So if you have questions on your student licenses, who has a license, if you need an extra license assigned, please ask your site coordinator or the statewide DL team if you have questions or again, need extra ones assigned. How do I know which students have a license? We'll be taking a look at that in just a moment, but you'll go to your roster. There's a column that says licensed and it has a check mark next to their name. So it's really easy to see who has a license, who doesn't. You can sort by who has a license and who doesn't, and take it from there. Am I able to get an administrative account? So all, I believe, teachers, we set up the site leads where you have a teacher account, but the ability to assign licenses. So if you do have a specific question on your account, feel free to send me an email. I can take a look at that and I'll probably loop in Elizabeth and Katie just to make sure, everybody has the right permissions. But from my understanding, you guys have teacher accounts, even the site coordinators, and then you have the ability to assign licenses. So setting up your roster, registering students. Again, that note, please ask your program director if you are managing your account or if they are. But if you are managing your account, you will just click on the Manage tab, click Student Roster. There is a blue button to register your students. You'll type in their information and press Finish. So it's a really easy process. You're just entering things like their first name, last name, grade level, username, password, or MobyMax can create that for them, and then their student ID. Student ID is important to um, carry throughout so that the data transfers year after year. So, not creating an ID like ABC123 or, my last name, the number one, my last name, the number two. It has to be something that is a unique ID so that it does follow the student and transfer data year after year. How do I know which students have a license? Again, there will be this column on your roster and it says licensed. As long as they have all of their information here and a check mark next to their name, you will have all of the licensed features assigned to their account. So how the student licenses work is there are student licenses that you can allocate to different accounts. Once that license is added to a student account or assigned, any teacher that shares that student will have access to all of the licensed features for that account. So student A is being shared with me, another teacher. We share that student account with another teacher later in the year. Those three teachers will have licensed features for that student account, anybody who is licensed. We'll talk about what that means if it's licensed or unlicensed in just a moment. But as long as they have a license, you can check all of their data, assign them different features, things like that. And I'll pause just for a moment because I saw the bubble. Awesome, thank you. So licensed features, again, they are applied to student accounts, and it's more so for what the teachers are able to do with those student accounts. So license features include placement tests, progress monitoring, interactive lessons, whiteboard activities, games and contests, and badges. So teachers have access to all of those things in the student or for the student accounts. There is some confusion sometimes for the first 30 days. So if you log into MobyMax for the first time ever, or if it's after archive, there are a couple instances where you sign in and it'll say, oh, you have a 30-day trial. So when you sign up, or again, sign in for the first time, you automatically receive 30 days of full access to MobyMax, which means every student on your roster is licensed. Um, you have full access, full features for those 30 days. After that, then it will just be for the students that have a license applied to their account, if that makes sense. So some teachers, especially at the beginning of the year, might see data for all of your students. You might be able to assign different skills for all of your students. But after that 30-day trial, if your account had started one, then it goes to just your regular account, licensed students. You'll be able to access those features for them. Student accounts don't look much different if they have a license assigned or not, and I'll pull up a student account. If they Again, they'll see all of their modules, they'll take their placement test, they'll start with their automatically assigned skills, but teachers will not be able to access the data for any of that. They will not be able to assign skills or assessments or really track anything. So the licenses are kind of vital to looking at that data and kind of progressing through Moby when you're assigning some of those different things. They'll still see their dashboard, some of those fund features and awards, but they will not have access to like the vibes, the achievements, things like that, because those engagement pieces are also part of the license. Let's see. There's my screen. So going back again, all of that, if they have a license, they'll have a check mark next to their name. And then these are kind of the features that come with that license. So everything we talk about today, whether it's progress monitoring report or looking at placement test data or assigning an assessment, IEP, all of that has to have a license in order to activate those features. Are there any questions on that? Because I know there were some questions. Or does that kind of cover the license? Okay, if you do, just type it and I will come back to that. So how do we register students and print login cards? We'll take a quick look at that because I know it's program specific. We'll adjust settings, take a look how we do that, and create groups on your roster, which is a way of managing your roster and organizing it. Awesome. Thank you, Elizabeth, for that feedback. So again, if you are managing your own students or your own roster, we will go to the Manage tab and then click on Student Roster, which is the top icon. On this page, you will see all of your students' information. So these are some of our demo accounts, and you see their information here. It says how many teachers the students are shared with when they were registered. If you click on an account, you can see the last time they logged in, some of their other information. It brings you to individual settings. But if you are registering a student, you will just click the blue button at the top right corner, enter their information, and click Finish. Then again, the student is on your account. I don't have a licensed column because in our demo account, we don't have student licenses there, but you will have a licensed column. And then you can sort, just like I'm doing for the registered column. You can sort by who has a license and who doesn't, so it's easy to see. For everyone, even if you are not registering your own students, if that's being done for you, you can still come to the How Your Students Sign In tab and then print login cards. So when you print a student login card, I believe it's a PDF with 8 different login cards to a page, but it's just little cards that you can print out or screenshot and send or whatnot with the login information. So it has a unique school URL, so they don't have to type in their school code each time, or you can copy that to a Google Classroom or something that classroom website that you use. So students can just click on that, takes them directly to their unique login page, and then they just enter their username password. Question about that. Can you select which students are included in the log? Yes, you can. That's a great question. And you can even change the message. So you can select their names, change the message, and then it generates a PDF for you to print out. Great question. So that's how you manage your roster or add students if you need to. Again, if you're assigning licenses, talk to your site lead. The directors, they will be the ones assigning licenses. And for all of your students, you can print login cards, see their information. Another way to manage your roster or organize it is going to the Manage Roster tab and then clicking Create or Edit Group. This is really helpful for different skill levels. If you see different students on different days or meet with them in small groups, really any way you need to organize your group. So if I create a new group and I will title it Quarter 1 Math Group. These are the math kiddos I see every day, Quarter 1, and then it will change Quarter 2 or whatnot. So I click Save. Then I select the students that I want in that group. I click Save. And now throughout Moby, whether it's on my roster or when I'm looking at data or assigning a skill, I can go to this drop down where it says Your Groups and select quarter one math group, and only those students will pull up. So it's really nice, again, if you have a lot of students on your roster, or even if you just have a few, to be able to pull up specific names to view data or, again, assign something is just really helpful. And it's a way to organize your roster. No one else will see this. So students won't see what group they're in. It won't affect other teachers' rosters. It's just for your organizational purposes. Before I get to those questions, I'm going to go over settings and then I'll loop back to look at those. Again, two different ways of getting to settings. We can click on the three dots in the upper right-hand corner, click settings, or we can go to manage and then click settings. Either way, it brings you to this page. The homework time is really just showing up on the student summary, and it's saying if students are working at home or during school hours. We have a passing score, which is set to a default of 70%, but it can go up to as high as 100. I will put a word of caution though, if you are sharing students with other teachers, please leave the settings as the default settings or discuss the settings with other teachers, because if you change a student settings or your classroom settings, and let's say you put the passing score to 85, and then you're comparing data with a team member who has their passing score at 70, it's just easier to compare data when the passing score is the same. Or again, if you're sharing students, we want it to all be uniform across the board. So if you're sharing students, just proceed with caution with adjusting any of these settings. Next up is the modules tab, and this is where all of the modules in Moby are housed. So we have our math module, our fact fluency, our foundational reading, and as you can see, you can change some of the settings on all of these, or you can change settings on all of the modules. So the math settings look a little bit different than fact fluency. The math settings, you can have the placement test read aloud or not. You can turn on the sound settings. I always recommend leaving the automatically assigned skills turned on. That way your students have something to work on. You don't have to assign things each time. So I always recommend leaving that on. You can assign a daily time and that will populate on the student account where it shows they have 12 minutes assigned for the day. But as you can see, if we click on fact fluency, the settings are a little bit different. Now you can change the fact speed, the highest fact level. So depending on the module, there are different settings that you can change or update. Last but not least, we have hide modules. So when I taught fifth grade, I would hide a lot of the early reading and phonics just so that my fifth graders didn't even have access to those. So on the student account, if you hide those, they'll just disappear and then everything will reorder. So it's all in one group. Still, there aren't, missing holes or whatnot, but it will just disappear from that page. So again, that's an option if students are clicking on modules that you don't want them to be working in. Anything that we went over just now for default settings for all students can also be done under individual student settings. So you would just click on a student's name, update the settings, and then you see those same tabs. You see the general tab, the modules tab, and the hide modules. So you can change settings for your whole roster. You can also change it for individual students. Or again, anytime you see that group drop down, you can change it for your groups. All right, let's go to questions. Can you select which students? Oh, we talked about that. Yes, click save. You can also bookmark pages you check frequently. Fact fluency. Yeah, we can take a look at fact fluency. It's just the multiplication, division, adding, subtracting. So we'll talk about the modules in just a moment, how students get started. And then if that doesn't answer all of your questions, please let me know and I'm happy to circle back to that. So we looked at registering students and printing login cards, adjusting settings, and creating groups as a way to manage or organize your roster. So how do students get started? That's how teachers get started with their accounts. How do students get started in Moby? Each student will have an individualized learning path, and those are brought about three different ways. So the first way is through a placement test, And the highlighted subjects each start with a placement test. The top three are kind of our core subjects: math, language, foundational reading. Those you can reassign throughout the year. We do have a placement test in fact fluency, vocabulary, paired reading stories. Those are given, but you cannot reassign them throughout the year. The student would have to be restarted and then they would take a new placement test. But it's really just finding a starting point for your students. Again, based on the level that they are at. And those top three, the math, language, foundational reading, it's an adaptive placement test, covers multiple grade levels. Um, and it starts one grade level below the grade level they're assigned. So if I'm a fourth grade student and I click on the math module, I will start with an easy third grade question, and then the test will adapt from there, depending on how I'm answering those questions. So in the highlighted modules, they start with a placement test. MobyMax finds the missing skills and then starts them at a certain level, which we'll talk about that data in a little bit. On the placement test, there are a variety of questions. So we have drag and drop, select multiple choice, fill in the blank, lots of different options for questions. The second way students get started is a grade level start. So these are modules like science, social studies, reading skills. MobyMax is not necessarily finding the starting point. It's based on the roster level. So again, if I'm a fourth grader, I would be rostered at a fourth grade level. And then MobyMax would start me at the beginning of fourth grade curriculum in science, in social studies, in reading skills, and then I'd work from there. That can always be adjusted under the settings, but these highlighted modules start at the beginning of the grade level that they are assigned to on the roster. Last but not least, excuse me, they will have a beginning start. So those are modules like numbers, alphabet letters, alphabet sounds, those foundational skills like the 1, 2, 3, ABC, getting them ready for other modules like math, some of those early reading modules. And students aren't starting at a specific grade level or necessarily taking a placement test. They're just starting at the beginning foundational blocks of those modules. So they're working their way through the curriculum and then moving on from there. And when we talk about assigning some of those different things in October, we'll also kind of dive into more of what some of the different modules are, how you can assign some of those different things. So be sure to come back for that. So now we'll take a look at a student account. We'll demo a placement test, what that looks like, and then how students actually move into their automatically assigned skills. So again, on the student account, we'll go over a quick tour and then we will start with that placement test. Anytime you assign an assessment, a skill, it will pop up on the assignments list. So as you can see, I assigned a benchmarker. It is here. It says the date it was assigned. If there is a due date, it will show there. Nothing happens after the due date. It's more so just for, the students' information that it's due on that day, but it will stay on the list even after the due date unless it's deleted. They have their subjects tab. So we have all the different subjects within Moby. The student dashboard, so they can see their progress if they click on the progress module. So fact fluency, this is what the data looks like, and it will show, if it's green, yellow, white, and it shows how far they are progressing. They can either click on the different modules or see the complete dashboard, and then it pulls this up for them. They can also see the time spent, so they can see what they're doing, parents can see what they're doing. They can change the date range, whether it's this week or all school year. So just, some data for the students to look at in their accounts. They have their fun tab or their engage tab. Again, licenses are assigned to them. They get game time and contests and vibes. Same with awards. You can give out awards, kudos, and then they have their gallery where they can see everything in one spot. So when we click on the subject tab and students sign in for the first time, they will click on a module. As you can see, they don't have to click on placement test, anything like that. They just click on the math module. They click next, and then they'll move through the different, I'm going to move this for just a second so it's not in our way. They'll move through the different questions. I am going to get these very wrong, so bear with me, but you can see some of the different questions. Once I've answered enough questions incorrectly, so it moves below that threshold, Moby says, "You're done. The placement test is over. We found your missing skills." Students click the green arrow next, and then they are automatically taken into their assigned lessons. So the lessons start with a tutorial. Typically, it's a short video. Sometimes it's a diagram or a picture, but students will watch the video. This one's a minute 40 seconds. They'll click on the green arrow, and then they have a question. So if I say there is just one ball on the screen, it says, "Oops, not so much. It's still incorrect." I pick a different answer, and then it gives immediate feedback. So it says, "No, that's incorrect. There are three balls on the screen." It shows the right answer. It shows the picture. They can always go back to the tutorial video and rewatch it, but then it progresses down at the bottom, or it tracks their progress. So the students know they are working on understanding counting. And as they move through the questions, so I'm just going to do this quickly again, answering incorrect, so you can kind of see if they get it right, they move on. And then at the bottom, that last star is filled in. So now I am done with that topic. I only got a 40% though. So typically, if a student has passed that topic, they will move on to the next one, count to 3 in a line. But since that's only at a 40%, that's not the passing score, I'm going to go back into understanding counting. So now, when I answer all of them correctly, if I can put the correct number in there, you'll see that the progress bar at the bottom is still counting. It is still tracking the progress. It's the stars are being filled in because I'm getting all of these answers correct. And now it says I have 100%. So I've earned game time, contest points, badge points. It updates the score to 100%, gets rid of that 40. You will still be able to see the 40 in your teacher account when I show you the student summary. But students will have this updated, and then they will move on to the next topic. So once they've passed, they will go to the next one. This one happens to be count to 3. They'll get a new tutorial, and they'll move on from there. So that's how students get started. Again, there's 3 different ways depending on the module. As you can see, they don't really, show students like these you start with a placement test. These you start at grade level. It's just more so for your background knowledge. And then everything's automatic. So when they click on one of those modules with a placement test, they get started, and then they automatically move into those assigned lessons. So before I move on, I will check the question box. ELL students, early reading modules. Um, you can always change that in settings. So yeah, you can adjust the settings depending on their level. Yeah, we can check if there is anything, whether it's settings or if something seems like a setting is disabled or whatnot. Again, please email me. Um, I'm going to try to answer all questions on the webinar as they come up, but if there is still something that you're, need clarification on, or if you want me to look at something specific, send me an email with a screenshot if possible, just so that the more information we have, the better, so it's easy to investigate. All right. We talked about tutorials. Most of them have tutorials, whether it's a video, picture, diagram. It really depends on the grade level and the subject and the topic. So my students have started working in Moby. Now what? So we just went through the student starting. They have begun their automatically assigned lessons. They're doing their practice work. So now what can you do as a teacher? In your teacher account, under our scores tabs, we have the big 5. So those are the 5 different reports or the things that teachers can go to, or they typically go to most often. So we put them in a group, we put it at the top, and we call it Big 5. So that's where our placement test data is, our progress monitoring data, IEPs, assignments, practice skills, and we will be going into a teacher account to look at all of this as well. Placement test data. So for math, language, foundational reading, we will be under the scores tab because it's data. We'll go to scores, click on placement test, and then you can filter by last test result. Anything blue in Moby is clickable. So we can either click on their names and then click on the test score. I always like just clicking on the test score because it takes you there right away. When we pull up the placement test data, we have all of the different grade levels with all of the standards under each grade level. It's broken down into, again, every standard. So for example, grade 2, this student earned a 76%. If we drop down the menu in operations and algebraic thinking, they earned a 75. Drop that down, and we can see this first standard has a 0, which is why we have that score of 75, why it filters into that 76 for grade 2. So again, I'll show you in a teacher account how we go through all this. But it's really detailed. You can really get specific standards that the student needs to work on. MobyMax is finding those skill gaps and then giving automatically assigned lessons based on that. I'm going to take a quick sip of water and I will be. All right. So the overall test score, the 3.0 that's highlighted, the whole numbers represent years, the decimals represent months. So this student scored an average of 3.0, which is right at the beginning of third grade, 3 years in. As you can see, grade K, 100%, grade 1, 75%. So even though the average score for this test is a third grade level, the start of third grade, this student is actually going to receive first grade standards to start. So some teachers, especially at the beginning of the year, say, why is my student working on such easy skills? It's because there's a skill gap. If you ever have a question on, again, why they might need to fill that skill gap, you can always click on this test score. So the 3.0, if you click it, it actually brings up the problem viewer for the placement test. So you can see the exact questions the student answered, how many were incorrect, what standards aligned with each question. And then, it really helps with kind of investigating why a student might be working on an easier skill or a harder skill, depending. So once students have started working on their automatically assigned lessons, then they moved into the progress monitoring data. So the placement test data, that's that kind of that first data point of the year. But then everything they do for practice in Moby will be housed under the progress monitoring data. So it's kind of like a virtual gradebook that's constantly getting updated when they're working in Moby. So again, we're still under our scores tab. We are now clicking on progress monitoring, which is right below placement test, and then clicking on the student's name, because again, anything blue is clickable. It looks very similar to the placement test data, but instead it has these columns. So instead of just listing one percentage, we have a beginning and an ending proficiency score, and then we have an increase or a decrease. So as you can see with this highlighted standard, students started at a 0, they're now at a 64. They've made a 64% increase. Up at the top under the name, we have our proficiency report, which we're currently looking at. We have our standards map, charts and graphs, monthly progress, and weekly progress. So you can click on each of these tabs for individual students, which is really helpful with the data. Standards map, kind of a visual representation. Charts and graphs, really great to bring to parent-teacher conferences, IEP meetings, data dives, filling out different paperwork. These are great. We also have monthly progress and weekly progress. So you can see again the breakdown of each grade, each standard, and see, for example, this student started working in this domain in March because they jumped from a 0 to a 50, and then in April a 58. So again, you could always break it down and look at each standard as well, but it gives you a really great breakdown of how the students are working in their accounts. And you can do that as a weekly progress as well. Any questions on those so far? All right. So now we're going to take a look, just moving my desk up a little. We're going to take a look at placement tests and progress monitoring and how to print those in an actual teacher account. So when you're in your teacher account, how do we get there? We go to our curriculum tab. And then here's where we can get kind of two different ways, right? We can click directly on the math module or tab. We can click on scores and then click placement test. Or if we click on the curriculum tab and then use our fun filters on the left and click on placement test, we can then click on the subject and it brings us directly there. So it brings us to the scores tab, it brings us to the placement filter, and then we can sort by last test result. And then again, click either on the student name and then click the test result. I like to just click on the test result right away. And it brings us to this page. So this student earned a 1.5, or kind of, 5 months into first grade, about halfway through. Even though the average score is a 1.5 though, they will be starting at the kindergarten level because it's not at 100%. So if you break it down, you see that measurement and data is a 67%. You break it down even further, and you can see this last standard is a 0. So this student will start with this standard on their automatically assigned skills. You can filter by just the missing standards. You can also click on that 1.5 and see the placement test. So this student answered 15 questions. You can filter just the incorrect ones. They answered 4 incorrectly. And you can see, again, that standard pop up because it was incorrect on this question. These standards aligned with this incorrect one. But again, it's just really great if you have questions why they're answering some easy skills or working on some easy skills or harder skills. Always come to the placement test first because it provides a lot of great data as to kind of like the why or the reasoning behind their individualized learning path. Anytime you see a print icon in Moby, you can print out the page. Just make sure whatever you would like printed is open. So if you printed this page right now, all you would see is the grade level and the percentages. Whereas if you wanted this printed, you would have to open up each of the domains to really get to the specific standards. That is possible. And then you would just print it and um, go from there. You can also bookmark anytime you see that icon. Again, just makes it pretty easy to navigate to. Questions about placement tests? Yes, now that it's Common Core, it makes it really easy to go back and forth between the different modes of grading. Yeah, same. All of the students are same in Moby with placement tests, getting started with automatic. And 8th grade is the highest grade level. So even if you have, high school students or anything like that, the missing skill gaps can still be tested in like 6th, 7th, 8th, and the curriculum goes up through 8th grade. So thank you for mentioning that. Any other questions on placement test score before I move on to progress monitoring? All right, so I'm still under the scores tab, but now I'm going to move one down to progress monitoring. Very similar to the placement test data, we can click on a student's name. So I'm going to filter by increase or decrease. And I see that this student has increased 1 month of learning. I'm going to click on their name. And again, it looks very similar to the placement test data. So we see all of the different grade levels. I'm going to collapse all of them actually. I see the starting proficiency, the ending proficiency, and if there has been an increase. So kindergarten, again, you can look at these, open up each category. This specifically went from a 0 to a 52%. So this student is working on this skill, making great progress. And then here are those tabs at the top. So you can see a visual representation, some different charts and graphs. Now this is a demo account. It's early in the year, so you won't see that same data or same chart until the student has started working a bit more, but you can still see the monthly progress, the weekly progress. And again, anywhere you see the print icon, you can print out the page and it will print just what is shown. Just as a reminder, if you guys do create groups in your roster, anytime you see this drop down, really helpful because you can, I've named them so many of the same, but you can just filter by that group and it will only pull up this data. So if you want to see the grade level summary, again, I have just this group pulled up rather than having to look at your whole roster. I can just pull up the data for these students. My standards map, I can just pull up the data for these 4 students or 5. So it just really makes it easy to pull data, look at just one section of it. But lots of different features in Moby. So as you start working in Moby, your students start working, and you start exploring, again, there's so many different tabs at the top. So we're really focusing on individual student progress today. So that's why we clicked on a specific student's name. But there are these different tabs like grade level summary, standards map, class progress, where you can see more of a classroom scope. So you can see for your whole classroom, your whole roster, and kind of get data on each of these skills. How many students have mastered the standard? You get a little um, list. So it's just really great for seeing patterns, seeing, creating groups within your classroom, a lot of different ways to use Moby. So even though we're focusing on more individual, as you start investigating and exploring more of Moby, feel free to kind of click around some of these different tabs at the top. One other thing while we're kind of here is anytime, like when you're looking at the problem viewer for the placement test, it shows you what they were actually answering. You can always see the curriculum too, and just all of the different problems. So if a student has a question on something, I'm going to select standards because that's easier to find for me. But you can always drop down, and then like if my student was working on solving add to word problems within 10, I can click on it. I can see all of the problem sets that are offered. I can go through each problem. So you always have access to all of the curriculum. So just know you can always look through it on that last tab. Or if parents have questions, that's always an option as well. Anything on placement test data or progress monitoring data, how to print it, what it is. Remember, it's always going to be under the scores tab. And then under Big 5, it's either placement test or progress monitoring. And then anything blue is the clickable parts. So we click on the test level or their name, then the test level. For progress monitoring, we just click on their name. All right, I will continue on. If you have questions, just let me know. So what are some other ways to view data? So we looked at the placement test, which is that beginning data point. We looked at the progress monitoring, which is sort of an updated grade book of all of the practice students are doing in Moby. There are a few other ways of, or several other ways of looking at data in Moby, and we're going to highlight 3 different ones right now. The first is the student summary. So there are different tabs up at the top, and you can look at student usage. It goes into all of the time the students are working, how many are correct, if they're on task. It really kind of is an overview of all of the work students are doing. You can filter by module and then the date range. So if you want the whole school year, if you want just a specific month or quarter, lots of different places within Moby you can filter by date range. So the proxy hour reports I know are specific to your guys' program. And really, we're looking at student summary. This is something that I believe has already been shared with you or will be shared with you, but just kind of going through it, and we will go into a teacher account to see this as well. But you sign into your account, you click on the reporting tab, click on student summary. We'll look at student usage, filter by what you want your date range to be. In this case, last month. So if you guys do these monthly, again, great way to kind of see just a highlighted range of data. You click apply, and then you just see all of the data for the last month. So students with data, obviously you want, because if they don't have data, then they're not using MobyMax. You can download it, print it. Anywhere you see that print icon will print whatever's on the screen. And then you can export either as a PDF or as an Excel file. And then there's some information on how to do your formula spreadsheet, which is kind of specific to your program, but I'll show you how to do that in the teacher account. So we'll look at student summary. which we just went over, but we'll also look at custom reports and then charts and graphs as some other ways of looking at the data. Awesome. Thank you, Elizabeth, for sharing that. So again, student summary, custom reports, charts, and graphs. So student summary, just like the report says, we can go into reporting, click student summary, click student usage. My favorite way, also, you can do it from the home page. So home tab, and then click student summary under cross-curricular reporting, and it brings you straight there. Either way, it brings you to this page. Look at the student usage, and then you can filter or um, not filter. You can organize or sort by these different columns. So if I wanted to sort by total time, I can see, for example, this student has worked in Moby for these different modules. If I click on the module, math, they worked in this module for 2 minutes. And then here's where that 40% is. So you guys saw me doing that. You saw me working the account. I got a 40% the first time, then I got 100%. It shows what time I was working, the date. Obviously, my time, I didn't update for the correct time zone, so that's why it says that. But you can see what topic they're working on, if it was an automatically assigned skill or a teacher assigned skill, and then what grade level they're working at. Just like the placement test, you can click on anything blue. So if I click that 40%, you can see those 5 questions that I answered. You can see how I answered it. You can see what the correct answer was. So you can always see what your students are doing in Moby. And so it's just really nice to kind of, again, if you want to investigate or if you have a question about anything, you can always print again, if you see that icon, so you can, show specific student samples if you would like. Now, you don't see a print icon for this problem viewer, but some teachers have screenshot it and then print it if you do need a specific work sample. Yeah, that's how, so the student usage report, that's what you guys will use in your doc. And again, it just lists a lot of great data. It shows where they're working, in what modules, how much time, etc. Any questions on the student summary? All right. Next up, we have charts and graphs and custom reports. Again, two different ways of getting there. We can go from the homepage under cross-curricular reporting, and we have charts and graphs, custom reports, the first two in the right-hand column. I can also click on the reporting button and down at the bottom, charts and graphs, custom reports. So we'll look at charts and graphs first. Again, as your students start working in Moby, more information will be collected, and this will have more data. But really, once your students start working, come in and explore the charts and graphs. There are so many different features, reports, different ways of looking at the data. For example, you can look at all of the modules at once. So you can see the total usage, how they're working in Moby, total skills completed by grade level, again, as an overview. You can also break it down by specific modules. So I can just look at vocabulary. I can just look at fact fluency or math. And then I can see, again, total skills completed. One of my favorite ones to look at is under progress, above or below actual grade level. The actual grade level is calculated based on the roster, and then their tested grade level is, how they're doing in Moby, and it shows how far behind or on level they are. So I always like to use this to create small groups, to reteach or, things like that. But there are just so many different charts and graphs in here that it's really useful, again, when you're looking for creating groups, looking at patterns across your data. Um, Definitely come into charts and graphs and kind of play around with some of those different filters and timelines, things like that. Anytime you see groups, again, please feel free to click on that because it does bring up just the students and you can see, data for those, um, just for those students. You can also see individual student data. It's very similar to like the progress monitoring report. So I always like to go to the progress monitoring report and then go to the tabs at the top rather than going through charts and graphs. But this is another way of getting to that individual data as well. Otherwise, you can do the classroom as a whole. And then last but not least, the custom reports. So again, we can get there under reporting. This time I'll get there through the quick access section. So if I click on custom reports, it might be something that you don't see in charts and graphs, or you don't want the individual data, whereas you want it all in one spreadsheet. So you would click on teacher, and then you can select the usage reports, progress and proficiency, or some of the different tests. So let's say I want to show the last placement test score for a particular subject, and I want all of this data on one spreadsheet. I would click next. I can click the subject, click next, title it, select the students, whether that's everybody, just the active students, or students in my group. Click finish, and then once it pulls up, depending on the report, some of them are just PDFs, some of them are Excel files and PDFs. But again, really great way of generating a custom report. And then if you do an Excel file, you can sort the data however you'd like or organize it. So just another option for looking at that data. Any questions on the student summary, charts and graphs, custom reports? I always like to say when we go to curriculum and then we click a subject and we click scores, this is really where I like to go for individual data. So when I'm looking at the placement test, when I'm looking at the progress monitoring report, those are wonderful. The student summary, individual data. Whereas when I go to charts and graphs, custom reports, I'm kind of looking for overall data for my classroom. I'm looking for all the data all in one place where I can sort it or organize or again, find patterns. So you can use it however you'd like, but that's kind of in my head how I like to differentiate those different data options. And I don't think there's any questions on those, so we'll just keep moving along. But if you do, please let me know. I'm happy to stop and answer any questions about those. All right, so we have half an hour. I will leave time at the end for questions and answers, but we are going to go into some of those assigning features. So again, we will be going over this again on October 28th and then going into a little bit more detail, but we are going to be taking a look at how you assign skills, assessments, and some of those interactive pieces. Which again, we'll take a look at in the account in just a minute. But to highlight two of the assessments, we've talked about the placement test, but just to highlight that again, the placement test identifies skill gaps. It's an adaptive formative assessment. You can assign it anytime throughout the year because as you saw in our demo, it is a shorter test. It covers standards across multiple grade levels, and the auto-assigned lessons are based on those results. The benchmarker test is a little bit different. It's a summative assessment. It's designed to be taken more sparingly because it is a longer test, and it covers all standards in one specific grade level. So if I'm a fourth grade teacher and I want to see in the middle of the year, or maybe just at the end of the year, how my students are doing on fourth grade standards, I can assign a benchmarker test. Why might this be helpful? Well, if I'm a fourth grade teacher and I have the majority of my students working at a second or third grade level, they might not have a lot of data yet for those fourth grade skills. So if I assign a benchmarker test halfway throughout the year, I can see for their assigned grade level how they're doing on those standards. So it's optional. You don't have to assign a benchmarker. The placement test is automatically assigned in those modules that were highlighted before, but the benchmarker test is optional. But just so you know, it is one of our more popular assessments that teachers choose to assign, and that's how it's different than the placement test. Again, it's summative, it's longer, it only covers standards in one specific grade level. For math specifically, you can select the length. It's either a 45 or a 90-minute test, and that's just based on if you want one question per standard or two questions per standard. So how do we assign skills? How do we assign assessments? And again, just to reiterate, everything is automatic for you. whether, that's the placement test they're taking and then starting their automatically assigned skills. But you do have the option to assign additional skills and assign assessments. So there's a few different ways of getting there. The first is on our homepage. I can click on assignments under the cross-curricular reporting under my quick access section, and I am brought to this page. The second way of doing it is going to my curriculum tab and then clicking assignments, and I'm brought to the same page. The third way of doing it is clicking on curriculum, clicking on a subject, and then clicking on the assign tab. Now this page looks a little bit different, but everything on the left is what I can assign. So I can assign IEP goals, I can assign placement tests, I can assign skills. So when I click assign skills, it brings me to this page, and I'll kind of show you my favorite way is just, again, quick access. Anything I can do through this widget on the homepage, I do because it's so easy. It's right at your fingertips. So I'm going to click on the assignments button, click create new assignment, and then here's all my different options. So if I want to assign a skill, maybe I was going over a math lesson during the week, but 3 of my students needed to have extra practice with this. We went over it, and then I want to assign this for their independent work on Friday. So I'm going to assign a skill, click next, click math or whatever subject. I always do MobyMax curriculum because again, it's all written for you. It's already there. I filter by standards instead of scope and sequence. Now, another word of caution, if I see the standard and I'm like, oh, this is the standard I was teaching, they need to work on, and I click it and I do the drop down, they're going to have an assignment with all of these topics. So I suggest instead of assigning the entire standard, I would filter or use the drop down menu and then just select a few topics that you guys went over that week or that you would like them to have independent practice on. Because otherwise they are going to have a lot of different problems to work through for that one standard. And again, if you are signing this just on a Friday for independent work or whatnot, they will have quite a bit of work to do. So just a word of caution, when you are assigning skills, always make sure you use the arrow down to see how many topics are in each one. But you'll select a few or a couple or one, click next, select either everybody on your roster, or again, you can filter by groups and just select a certain group. Click next. You would name the assignment. You don't have to pick a due date, but you can. You can schedule it for later, show it right now. And then I always say, have it be at the top. So then that way, when students are in their accounts, they will see your assignments pop up here. But again, if they click on subject and then just click on whatever it is, they will also get that first. So just like teachers can get to things in multiple ways in Moby, so can students. The assign tab just makes it really easy for them to see visually what they need to work on. But in the hierarchy, teacher assigned skills come before auto assigned skills. So again, even though everything's automatic, let's say I'm a 4th grade teacher, my 4th grade student is working on 2nd grade skills in their Moby lessons, but I need them to work on a 4th grade skill we learned that week. So I might want to assign a 4th grade skill. When they click on math, they would get that skill first, and then they would start with their other auto assigned 2nd grade skills. Does that make sense? So teacher assigned skills come before any auto assigned skills. Sometimes if they're in the middle of a lesson, they need to finish that one first before they move on to the next one. So that's sort of something else that causes confusion from time to time. So if a student is still working on something and they don't get it, just make sure they finish with whatever they're currently working on, and then the next thing should be next in line. All right, so we would click finish. I'm not going to actually assign that right now, but when you assign something, whether it's an assessment or a skill, it will appear on our assignments tab. And then when you click it, it will show the students, if it's in progress, if it was completed, the score, and then you can see, the score for each standard, all that right there. Anything blue is clickable, so you can also see the actual questions they answered and the problems. All right, so that's how we assign skills. Very similar to assessments. We could go one of those three ways to get to assignments. But again, from the quick access, create new assignment, it would be the exact same process. So whether it's placement test, benchmarker, IEP goal, all of that you can assign from this screen. Okay, and we have a little extra time, so I'm going to continue into IEP goals if that's okay, just to kind of show you what the difference is between an IEP goal and then just like a regular assigned skill. And how to delete old assignments. Yes, I'll go back to that real quick. So the assignments, if there is something that you would like to delete, you just click on the assignment and then click delete. If you would like to delete it just from a specific student's account, up here you click students, and then like this student, this demo has all of these different ones that you can click. You can print those ones. Oh, sorry, manage upcoming. We change to that tab, then click on student name. So this student has 7 upcoming skills. Let's say I want to delete these and just take them off of the account. I can click on that and then click delete. So then those will be deleted from the account. They will no longer have them, and they can move on to their automatically assigned skills. Yeah, no problem. All right, so IEP goals. Again, important. If you modify the passing percentage on the settings, the IEP goal passing requirement will also adjust. So if there is a certain passing score you need for an IEP goal or just for your own, just know that if you do adjust that, it does affect the account overall, not just, specifically for IEPs or whatnot. The IEP goal always takes priority over other assigned content, keeping students focused. So how is an IEP goal different than just assigning a skill? When I assign an IEP goal in MobyMax, it will have a date range. It will have how many goals are set, how many have been met. They will get work, auto-assigned lessons based on their IEP goal. So students do not need an official IEP to have an IEP goal in Moby. It's just a way to track a specific standard and give auto-assigned lessons based on that until they've shown proficiency. So unless you need to track when a goal is met, I would just assign skills when you need to. But if you really are looking at a specific standard, want your students to practice that first, and then need to track the date it was met, or what their past percentages, their current one as they're working on it, then you can create an IEP. But it kind of just shows the standard. It shows if it has been met, when it was met, the date it was assigned, and what their current proficiency is on that. A lot of this you can also get from the progress monitoring report. So it really kind of just depends on your need for your students and what data you need. But it's just a way to track this and again, assign these standards to students first. IEP goal, we do it the same way. We go to the assignments button, we create a new assignment, assign an IEP goal. I'll assign it in math just to the student. And I will select a standard or a couple standards, select my date range, save and apply, finish, and now my IEP goal has been set. The only difference with IEP goals is they are not under the assignments tab. They are actually housed under the IEP scores. So to get there, I would go to curriculum, filter by IEP goals, click math, and then it brings me right to my scores. So I can either look at the IEP goals by date range or by the student name. So you can see this student has 3 goals, 2 for this date range, 1 for this date range. If I select the first one, it shows me that one of those goals have been met. The date it was met actually comes before the date it was assigned, which just means that by the time the teacher had assigned this, the student had already shown proficiency on a placement test, on auto-assigned skills. But again, it's just good to know that the student is already has already mastered that skill and is at 100% proficiency. It shows when they showed that proficiency, and then it will go on to this next standard and they will work on that. So just another way of using MobyMax to kind of bring it all back to the beginning. Please know it is all automatic, so you don't have to do this. It's all optional, but you know your students best and what data you need. So if this is something that you think would be really helpful, this is a great option. But you can also always check under the progress monitoring report and see those specific skills. So you can always go under here too and look at specific standards, what their current proficiency is. So lots of different ways, again, of looking at the data. It just kind of depends on what works best for you and your students. We also have interactive assignments. So we have whiteboard activities, fluency team games, printable worksheets. These are great for small group and whole group instruction. It's a little bit different way of using MobyMax. So we have interactive lessons. It's a whole class instruction. So students are using individual devices. Real-time results are being collected. But instead of having students all on their own page on individual devices, you are all working on the same problems at the same time. So you can discuss the same problem, use it more of a discussion whole class lesson. Whiteboard activities, another way of using Moby, but no individual data is being collected because students are not on their computers. This is just meant to be shown at the front of a board or at a small group table. I know some programs might be virtual, so just kind of depending on how you use it in your classroom and for what purpose. This could be an option, this could not, but it is a way of using MobyMax in a little bit different of a way. There's also worksheets if you ever need that as an option. But again, we're just going to curriculum. We're going to a subject that we want. I always click math just because it's our, the first one. But under our assign tab, here's where you can find all of those interactive pieces. So we have interactive lessons down under whole class. We have whiteboard lessons. You can assign IEP goals from here. You can assign board games. So students, again, there are other pieces too that you can do virtually. When students are in their accounts, you can see like the interactive lesson, that's this last orange module. So students click that instead of, like the math module if they're doing that. But they also have these fluency board games and team games. So this is an interactive piece. If they would like to work on that, you assign the team games. They can always click on board games and then they click a subject. They move through a game, they click next. I think I already started in this account, but they can select what topics they work on and work their way through that. So there are different ways of using Moby, again, outside of clicking on math and working on those auto assign skills. That is, beneficial. Our recommended time minimum is 30 minutes per week per subject. The recommended amount of time is 60 minutes per week per subject. But to throw some different options in there as well. Consider fluency team games, board games, interactive lessons, to sort of mix into what you guys are working on. Those are other options that you can assign. And again, in October, we'll be going into more depth into assigning skills, looking at those assignments, how to reassign, things like that. Today's more of just an overview, but we will be getting into all of that and more demos back or further into October. All right, so that's the last slide, but there is one other thing that I just thought of. Under curriculum, again, we can click on the module, and I did not show you this, but if you are wondering what the students are currently working on, so sometimes students come to teachers and they say, you know, um, or it's really easy, or they think it's really hard, or whatnot. You can see the most recent day. You can also see in progress and upcoming. So when you go to their name, you can see the topic that they're working on, and then you can see if it's in progress. You can see how many math assignments they have, the auto assign skills. So this student, let's see, if I click on auto assign skills, I get a list of what will be upcoming. So all of these second grade skills are going to be on their automatically assigned lessons. So that is on the overview tab. We talked about the assign tab, the scores tab, and the curriculum. And then again, those three cores, or core subjects, whether it's math, language, foundational reading, those all look the same way with these tabs, and you can access the same information. Students, again, always refer to them or refer them to their dashboards if they're looking for data. So progress, time spent, really good for them to track their own data as well. All right. Well, we have the last, 14, 15 minutes or so to go over questions. So if there's anything that you do have questions on, please feel free to reach out. Whether it's, right now, throughout the year, send me an email. When you do send emails, please include screenshots or any specific information, whether it's, the scholar's name or what's happening. It helps to just kind of expedite the process and get answers to you quicker. Again, this is kind of an overview, and then in October, we will be taking a deep dive into the assignments, assessments, those different features, standards, all of that fun stuff. So as your students have started working, you'll start seeing this data, really go into those charts and graphs, student summary. If you have questions on that, reach out. But anything else you have questions on for today or need clarification on, please let me know. Feel free to unmute, type it in the chat, and I'm happy to answer. Just as a reminder, it's being recorded, but no worries at all. Please shout it out. But if we are looking at student data, I might unshare my screen just so you guys, for privacy.
Erin, could
Oh,
you
yes.
show where to find the help videos and articles and I I think you still do the like the instant messaging chat for help?
Not currently. That feature was disabled, but we do have our contact support. So you can always give them
Okay.
a call if you need like an immediate. You can always call me as well, but if for some reason I'm on another call or whatnot, you can always call our support number or send them an email. These are their hours. And then under the help tab, so this is just your teacher account, you click on help and then you can search. So let's say I want to do IEP. There's videos, there's FAQs, how-tos, and then a lot of these are just, a few minutes, and then you can get all of those from there. How do I start students? How do they sign in? So type in a keyword and then different articles or videos pop up. And if you ever have ideas too, please send them to us. We really care and value teachers' opinions and how you're using it day to day. So if you do have ideas, you can always send those to us here as well. But otherwise, search for a keyword, look at our FAQs or the how-to videos, and those will help kind of when you're in the moment and might need to search something. Our support team too is great about answering calls, responding to emails within 24 hours. That's kind of our general rule. Within 24 hours, you'll get a response. So if you do have questions too, feel free to reach out to any of the above. Any other questions about your accounts or the data or how to manage anything or anything like that? Any other clarifying questions?
Can teachers still earn Amazon gift cards?
So we don't have the same program that we used to. It kind of just depends on individual um, circumstances. So I can look into the account. Currently, it's not set up for Amazon. There are some different like sponsorship things that can take place. So I'll probably email you directly just so we can talk about that. But in terms of just in their accounts, if you guys don't see anything about that on your homepage, then it's not enabled. That's a great question. Any other questions? I'll also kind of, as I wait, put this screen up so that if you do, feel free to copy down my contact info. Again, you can send me a direct email, direct call, and then we will be going over some of those assigning features in further detail in about a month.
I'll go ahead and stop the recording now, so if that makes it easier to ask questions, go
Okay.
ahead. Thank
Yeah,
you
that
very
sounds great.
much.